computer, share. Okay. I hope I'm sharing the right screen. But anyway, okay, so the instruction material is whatever I cover in class, so your slides, as well as there are reading material associated with each of the topics. So if we go back here once, and here you have book chapters and reading material. So if we click on that, you'll find with every topic, no, that's additional study material. Okay, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this one. So here you'll see that for every topic, I assigned a reading material. So usually I cover everything you need to know, but if you want to strengthen a certain knowledge, you go back to those reading material. I'm not going to ask you random questions from these book chapters if I didn't cover it in class. So this is something just to go back to and read more about the topic. Okay, so you'll also find here under every week, you will find the lecture material. Like I updated today's lecture, I will put the updated slides up here. You have the slides from last offering, but I will update the slides. You'll find the recording of the lecture. And then if anything additional, like you have practice problems, these are for extra +5 points. They are not part of your grade, they're additional. So if you solve them, you get 2 things that are good for you. One, practice and getting ready for the exam, because sometimes I get questions from the practice. And then second, you get 5 extra points. Bonus. So every time you see under any of the week's practice problems, please work on them, submit them, and then you'll get 5 points. And once you submit and I close the submission, I will open up the key for you to study from for the exam. So there's always a key associated with these practice problems. Okay. Another thing, there are sample exams from last offering. So here, there are 2 midterms or 2 exams. You get the exam without the key, so you can, when you study and getting ready for the exam, try to go in and solve it, and then look at the key. Don't look at the key and study from the key. This is kind of a test if you are ready for the exam. It's going to be different questions, obviously, but if you do well by comparing to the key, that means you're ready for the exam. So there are 2 exams that are going to be, and a final. So you have 2 exams, a final, and a presentation. That's the bulk of your grade distribution. There's also participation. I love participation. Some of you know that. So if we go back here, and going back to the syllabus. So here you see our course objectives, the different topics I'm going to cover, and it's going to be like building like a puzzle piece. I'm going to start from the very beginning in very basic information that all of you know about proteins, starting from amino acid, but I'm going to put it in perspective and build upon it as we go in the class. So we're going to start very, very basic, almost a refreshing of information that you've taken in food chem or organic chem or somewhere in life. But then here, I'm just gonna link everything together. So finally, when the class ends, you're gonna be all young protein scientists. So everything ties up, starting with the very, very basic, and then more complex, looking at how the structure is impacting function, looking at enzymatic application, looking at different sources of proteins, digging deep into them, and then protein modifications at the end. So these are the topics, and then these are your exams, 2 exams and a final. And then your presentation is worth 70 points, and then participation. So for this class, you want to participate up to 20 times. Each participation is a +2. And I want to have a dedicated person to take participation who is now an expert.
It's an honor.
Yeah. She's been written you as the major TA for the analysis, so she's doing a lot of the participation. And she's going to be very objective and not give participation for herself and not for somebody she doesn't like in the class.
If you guys split me a Starbucks gift card.
Okay, that's exactly what we don't want. And then there is, so you can earn up to 40 points in participation, and then there's 10 points subjective for Pam to decide whether you earn 10 points or not. Ha ha ha, me, Starbucks. Okay, and then also I like to give random extra credit assignments. So I'll talk about presentation here in a second, but you get extra credit up to 30 points with all of those practice problems that you will have throughout the semester. And then one day randomly, I am walking in, whoever is in class will get a +5. So I know that all of you will attend because all of you are in my lab, so you won't miss class, most of you. And Priyansh is always there and put them out. And then somebody dedicated to plant proteins will be here most of the time. Okay, so I want to spend a little bit time about the presentation. So this is something that you can start thinking about right from the start, this first week, now that you have a dedicated partner with you. So what you would want to do is select a topic. And okay, you're going to tell me what topic. I'll tell you in a second. We have, let's see if I have that file open. Syllabus, learning outcome, evaluation. Yes, the topics. Let me take this over here. So we have 6 topics. Usually we have 6 presentations. But you can select from these topics, and potentially the dates of these presentations are listed here based on the order of the topic that's covered in the class. So we talk a lot about protein isolation, fractionation, characterization. So this is a big topic. So hint and team, you want to work with somebody. Group of 3, that would be a nice topic for group of 3. And then enzymes, we cover enzyme kinetics, we cover enzyme, how to purify, how do you measure activity, and we cover applications. So that's another cool topic. And then these are just if you want to focus on one type of protein, and you can talk about allergenicity, for example, bioactivity of these select proteins, proteomics, evaluation of the proteins. And then here you have another big topic, gene protein modification. That would be another good one for a 3-person group. And then for protein modification, actually, multiple groups can focus on protein modification because we have enzymatic modification, we have non-thermal modifications, we have glycation modification. So there are a lot of topics within modification that multiple groups can select and say, okay, I'm going to do protein modification enzymatic on daily protein. That would be one group. You cannot duplicate the topic. First come, first serve in terms of selection of the topic. So here's a little bit of, you know, what the topics can entail underneath those general umbrella of topics. So what I did this year, and actually last time offering, because students would pick really miserable, sad, bad papers to present on, I decided to select some papers and tell you select from them or something similar to them. So I put that on Canvas. So the idea is here is you want to have for each presentation, so group of 2 or 3, 2 manuscripts that you want to pick up, 2 publications or 3 publications if you're a group of 3. And these 3 publications will be related on that one topic that you chose to tell a story. They can complement each other. Like somebody looked at impact of pH extraction on pea protein. Somebody looked at salt extraction of pea protein. So they can be under the same topic, but they complement each other. And not oldest 2017 to 2023. Sometimes there are good papers, solid papers in 2015 or 16. I even included those in my list. You can still select those if there are solid papers that cover topics that cement the principles we cover in class. So what I want you to do is, first of all, think of a topic and then tell me your topic by I think I put the date by when I want to know this. I can't remember now, somewhere here or in the other document. I will remind you via email, but soon, the sooner you select the topic, the sooner you can start working with your teammate on the presentation and selection of articles. So if you go here, what is that? Okay, session ended. I don't know what session, but okay, so here I have suggested articles for presentation. No literature review. You need to know this. It should be a research article or 2 research articles. I didn't mean to click on that, but it did. So this is one of our recent publications. That was not intentional. Yeah, but I have many suggestions. So most of these I know or we published and are good. Some I have not really read in depth, but I think they're good topics. Some of these manuscripts is an example, and then you need to find something that complements it if you like it. I don't always have 2 manuscripts that complement each other for you to pick from, but it gives you an idea of what articles we would be looking for. It has to be published in good journal with a good impact factor. That kind of weeds out the poor quality articles. Sometimes it's unfortunate, even in a good journal, we don't have a good quality article, but that's okay. This is part of the exercise. Because in your presentation, you're going to cover certain things. So go back. This is not a very good way of going back and forth between things. Where is it here? No, I was talking about syllabus, wasn't I? All right. It's open right here. Okay. So you want to build your presentation to, have a overview of the case being presented, justification, hypotheses, objective, experimental design, brief methods, major findings, and then your critique. So it's very important to include in the presentation your personal opinion of the feasibility and application. Additionally, make sure to enforce concepts covered in the class. So we talk about basics, and then you're going to see some of that in the papers. So basically, you want, when you're presenting, you want to say, as we learned in class, this relates to this topic and so on. Because you want to cement a certain idea by looking at what literature is out there. You will be timed. So you want to be careful not to exceed 20 minutes total. I suggest 8 minutes, no more than 10 minutes per person, and you have to have it balanced. Cannot have one person talk for 15 minutes and another person for 3 minutes. You have to have it balanced. I don't care how you do it. One thing I don't want you to do is each one of you have a manuscript or a publication and you work independently and then put the slides together. No, both of you need to learn both articles. You need to prepare the slides together, consistent format, consistent slides. This is a group work, not two individual papers put together. Do not do that. So you want to show that you are working as a team. You want to have good balance, and then you'll be asked questions. Each one of you should be able to answer questions related to any of the publications or manuscripts that you have. Your group is presenting. I would want you to have show me a draft week or 2 weeks ahead of time so that I go over the content with you to make sure that you have the information that needs to be there, that your colleagues are going to benefit from it. It's kind of learning for you and learning for the class. So that's why I review it with you. 2 weeks will be great ahead of time so that you have time to make adjustments based on my review. And then you will have final slides. We'll post those slides the day before the lecture, and we'll send the papers, or I put the papers on Canvas for everybody in the class to be able to access those. So what's the role of the people in the class? They're going to grade you. So you're going to grade yourself, and also they are going to grade you. You are going to grade each other. So here is the evaluation sheet. So you will be graded as a group on certain content, 1 through 5 points. And then you are going to be graded individually on certain points, like how do we feel about contribution to the team, to the group, presentation skills, level of comfort, eye contact, comprehensiveness. Are people able to understand you? Are you able to explain things clearly? How did you handle questions? Also individuals, so one person cannot be answering all the questions, the other person will get a 0 if that's the case. Then we add, and it would be a grade out of 7. So the class, it feels like lab meeting. The class will have 25% weight of the grade. So I will take all of the class sheets and I will average them, and the grade for each member will have 25%. Then you're going to grade yourself. So if you are the presenter, please write your name here. Don't give yourself 70 out of 70. Be very critical of yourself as well. So grade yourself and grade your team member. you get 25% weight of the grade on your own grade, and then I will grade you as well, and my grade will take 50% weight, just because I'm important. Okay, so this is how it's, then you can see what you will be graded on, so you make sure your presentation will get you full marks. Usually students do very well on the presentation, and those 70 marks points help your grade. Usually the exams are the tough cookies in this class. Okay, any questions about the presentation? I wanted to spend some time on it because it's a very important part of the learning. Do you have any questions about it?
I have a question. I haven't looked at the example. I think you said there's an example or no?
Of the presentation? I did not post an exam, but I could. From last time, yes, I could.
Okay.
I have to remember who did a really good job.
So since we have two manuscripts, should we go through one and then go through the other, for example, like hypotheses, results, and things?
Yeah, so your presentation, well, different people approached it differently. Some approached one and the next one, and then they criticize both in comparison to each other. Some just started talking about them together because they were so related.
Okay.
And then showed the results together. So it's really up to your creativity, but it should be two sources of research. Yeah. Good question. Any other questions about the presentation? Okay. I want to go back to the syllabus to see if I covered everything. Oh, before the syllabus, I want to also show you this document, the student learning outcome. I like to develop these for every class I teach because they're not very specific as a study guide, but at least when you study, first of all, after we're done with the class, this is what you will be able to do. All of your student learning outcomes are listed for the entire class. But I have 4 specific topics, what I would want you to know. So when you study, then you go here and say, do I understand the importance of proteins in food systems? Can I give an example? Can I elaborate on this example? All right, do I know the chemical structure of the different amino acids? Yes, you're gonna learn those structures. You're gonna hate me when you learn them, but you're gonna not like me, I don't care. You're gonna appreciate knowing them because this will put the pieces together for you. How a secondary structure is formed, how a tertiary structure is formed, how quaternary structure is formed. Why do we have certain interactions and how these interactions impact the functionality of the protein? So if you know your amino groups and you know the R groups, then everything will make sense. So that's why I kind of ask you to know them because it will add to the piece of the puzzle by the end. Okay. So for every topic, you'll have that student learning outcome. One other thing in terms of material, study material. So under different topics, sometimes I have additional reading material. So related reading material and handouts, protein structural characterization handout. So there are, depending on the topics, I give you more learning material. Again, what I cover in class is what you're responsible for, but these reading material can reinforce a certain topic or certain. Okay, any question about the structure of the class and what is expected of you?
I have a question on practice problems. So are you supposed to like submit those in that week? Like for example, there is one in week 2. So are you supposed to submit it in week 2 or
No,
like that?
after the topic, I finish the topic, then I will tell you this. Now you can solve this problem, this set of problems, and hand them in next week. You have at least a week to do something. But sometimes I'm flexible. If you want a couple of weeks, that's okay. But I won't release the key until I know that whoever wanted to submit have submitted, but then I want to release the key before the first exam, for example, or before the second exam. That would be helpful for studying. Any other questions? Okay, yes, Bonnie.
Sorry, one more thing about the practice problems.
Yeah.
Do you have to do them right?
What's
Or
that?
You have to do them right to get the points, or if you do them, what do you get the points? Regardless.
You know, that's a very smart question.
Or, you know,
So if you showed effort, so I'm not gonna go grade them and give them back to you graded, but what I'll do is I'm gonna look at them and say, okay, this person spent effort trying to answer, so they get the 5 points. Wrong or right, you get the 5 points, but I need to see effort. If I see just random, just filling the page, no. Yeah. So not too strict about it, but I need to see effort made. And the more effort you put in there, the more you're prepared for the exam. Yeah, any other question? I have a question for you. Do you prefer, like, I stop after 50 minutes and give you 10 minutes of break and then continue? Or do you prefer that I go straight and get you out early?
I like the break.
I like the
break.
Break, good. I like the break. Okay, so in 5 minutes is a break time, so I will start. I'll do like some introduction that I love to make usually at the beginning of this class, but I didn't get my show and share with. Usually I prepare things and bring to kind of make a point of things. And my brain was not with me this morning, so I didn't do that. So, but what I did is I updated the slides to include some of the show and share items that I usually bring with me. So I'll do some of that, and then I'll give you a 10 minutes break and we continue with the lecture. But for now, let me just go over my show and share items. Okay, let's see. Am I gonna take this over here? And let's see, if I hit present, where it's gonna go, I'm not sure, but we'll find out. There, cool. So proteins, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time talking about the importance of proteins and why we love proteins and the uniqueness of them. So first of all, what I usually bring to the show and share section of the first lecture is 3 ounces of milk. And then I also bring with me 3 ounces of yogurt. So you want to imagine that this is 3 ounces of milk and this is 3 ounces of yogurt. Okay. Which one has higher moisture content? Which of the two has higher moisture content? 3-ounce milk or 3-ounce yogurt? Milk?
The yogurt.
The yogurt. Milk.
Yeah.
Milk. Who says milk? Oh my gosh. Leave Who says yogurt? You also need the. They're the same. So how do we make yogurt? Not Greek yogurt, forget about that. That's a new commodity. That didn't exist 2 years ago. How do we make yogurt? That's the culture. That's culture. Okay, great. And what do you do after that? Fermentation. Fermentation. So we warm it up 37, 40 degrees. We let it ferment. What happens to the pH during fermentation? So it drops to what?
About, I think, 2.7.
3.5.
3.5.
Related here. It's not 3. 4 points?
6.
Yes. Everybody needs I'm talking. Okay, so what happens, how does the pH drop?
Macro.
Lactic,
Bacteria, they produce
lactose gets converted to lactic acid because of the fermentation bacteria. Okay, so now I have lactic acid, it's dropping the pH to 4.6. What happens at that?
Or just coagulate.
Yeah, because it's the isoelectric point of casing. So now what happens is there are no net charge. So the proteins are gonna come together and form a three-dimensional gel. Yogurt is a gel, so one type of gel. So what happens to three-dimensional gel? What's inside of the gel? Water. So you have water trapped in the matrix. You don't lose water. Maybe a little bit of water evaporates because the temperature is a little higher than room temperature. But the protein is what gives you this texture at the similar moisture content. You form the gel. And the stronger the gel, the less is the syneresis. So when you open your yogurt, there's a lot of water on top. Not so great gel. What they do sometimes, they supplement the yogurt with whey protein to enhance the gelation so that you can entrap water and you don't have that syneresis over time. Okay. And I usually bring 3 ounces of a cheese. Okay. Which one has more moisture now? Yogurt and wheat. Yes. So even if you're not a student, they're gonna compete with you, these postdocs, and then you won't get participation vote. So you can speak, otherwise these postdocs are gonna take all your participation. All right, so here in cheese, how do we make cheese? So what do we do with the enzyme? What do we do?
Like they do the curdling, separate the.
Curdling, yeah, with enzyme. So chymosin, enzyme, we call it rennet sometimes. So what happens? We're gonna learn in the dairy section how that works. So you have your caseins are made up of multiple different caseins, and then you have a kappa casein that is surrounding your casein micelle. That the chymosin is going to break off the glycomacropeptide, which gives the stability to these micelles for the charges. So you lose the charges, and then those proteins now lost the charge on the surface that micelle they fuse. So you form a coagulum, not the gel. So the cheese curd is actually the coagulum where the water is picked up. So you have the whey and you have the curd. It's no longer a three-dimensional gel like the yogurt that holds the water. It's actually a coagulum that you want syneresis in this case. So you want the water, and the water has the whey protein. They're soluble. So then your whey is separated from the casein curd. Again, that's all function of protein. Because for proteins, you have yogurt, you have cheese. Yeah.
Where does chymosin come from?
Yeah, it can come from animal sources like the stomach or in big animals. Huh?
Because that's usually rennet, right?
It was chymosin is one of the enzymes. So it's the scientific name of, I think rennet is the stomach. What does it mean? It's a calf. It's very specific to where that chymosin enzyme is coming from. But the name of the enzyme. But there are microbial factors, not for vegan people, or for not necessarily vegan, that vegetarian people that eat dairy, and if they don't want any animal source, there are microbial kinds. All right, so first, look at the protein in dairy and the different functionality that gives you different textures and different food products. Okay. I usually bring here a variety of bakery items. One of them is your famous loaf bread. So what do we want of a loaf bread? We want volume, okay? And then elasticity. When you squeeze it, today I have it in my hand, squeeze and it comes back. to its form, and you have very regular air cells. And when you want to break that piece, there's some resistance to breaking. When you chew that bread, there's this desirable chewiness to your bread. So I want strong elastic dough or viscoelastic dough to get to that loaf bread. Okay, pita bread. Familiar with pita bread? So pita bread is the opposite. You don't want very elastic dough. When you make your dough, you actually, what do you call it? Roll it out, and you make a very, very thin layer of dough. So you want your dough to be more viscous, extendable, so that it doesn't shrink. So your pita bread remain the same size as we spread it, and has this really nice thin. I like the thin. I don't know that pita bread with thick. I don't like it. The thin ones are the best ones. So then they're very thin, and then you can have pockets and you make sandwiches. So the difference between the flour that is used for this versus that is the gluten. Is there gluten in wheat?
Yes.
Yes. All of you need gluten. There is no gluten in wheat. There's gluten forming proteins. Gluten is formed when you knead the flour. So you get the flour, you put water, you form a dough, you get your gluten. So what proteins do you have in flour?
There's
What are they called?
gluten, like,
Yes, there you go. Good. That's why he's gonna tell us this. Okay, so gliadins and glutenins, these are the proteins that form the viscoelastic gluten structure. Glutenin has the elasticity, gliadin has the extensibility. So when I want to make pita bread, I need to look for a dough that probably has higher gliadin to gluten ratio. When I want to make a loaf, I want the higher glutenin to gliadin ratio. Okay, so it's not just the type of protein, it's not just the wheat protein, it's the composition of that wheat protein impact what kind of product we can get out of it.
So in terms of having like a gluten allergy or gluten intolerance,
Mm.
are you allergic to the gluten and gliadin all the time or only when they're like activated into gluten, I guess?
Anytime. So if you have an allergy to wheat protein, so it can be, most of the time it's gliadin, but there are glutenins as well. It can be allergenic. This is very individual based. So if you inhale your like the flour and you breathe it in, you get the allergic reaction. So it doesn't have to be in the form of gluten, but you have gluten sensitivity. But for example, when we're unable to digest it properly, that's when the gluten is formed. So there are different, there you have the celiac disease, you have the gluten sensitivity, you have the allergenicity. So these are all different problems that you can have with the wheat protein. But wheat protein is not toxic. And if you don't have celiac disease or allergenicity or sensitivity, you don't go and buy gluten-free. Yay. What does that mean, gluten-free? We've been eating bread since the beginning of when? Thousands of years, can we say? Anyway, so pound cake. We all love pound cake, right? Do we need viscoelasticity in a pound cake? No. So here we use a little bit of flour, yes, but we use eggs, right? So you want that foaming, you want the emulsion because you have fat in there, you have aqueous, you have all of the tasty things in there, you want to mix them together. So egg protein is the most functional here, and your gluten is not having a lot of functionality. It helps with formation and stabilization of the air cells and everything, but if you take a pound cake and you want to break it, that's why sometimes I have it here with me physically to show you that it breaks so easily, there is no resistance. But when you try to break a piece of bread, there's going to be some resistance as you take. Okay, so Usually I make a dough and I bring it out, and I also bring gluten with me. So when you take the dough and let it rest, you knead it. So the kneading process is actually making those proteins. You're causing gliadin and glutens to interact with each other to form the gluten matrix. So what's behind this, when you take the dough and you stretch it and then you reform it, that basically what keeps the dough in its shape is this gluten. So if you take the dough and run it underwater, that's what I do and I bring with me. So you run it underwater, you're washing out the starch. And you keep kneading and kneading, and then at the end, you wash off all the starch, and you end up with a gooey matrix, and that's your gluten. And this is what you stretch and gives you that kind of rubber, elastic kind of texture. So this is very, very unique to it. No other grain gives you this. So they try to, for people that want gluten-free, like rice bread, but how do you make it? You have to add things to make it, make a loaf out of it. And I'll talk about modification of the protein that will allow you to make a rice bread or barley bread, whatever it is. Barley has gluten. It's the other one. Oats doesn't have gluten. Huh? Rye. Okay, rye bread. Yes, yes. Okay, good. I also bring with me strawberry jelly to the class. So pretend that I have one here. And what I do is usually I open this and I flip it. And then when you flip it, nothing comes out, no water. So you have a perfect gel. What's the percentage of protein? Very low. Give a number. Oh, yeah, okay, so you're redeeming yourselves now. Yes, 1%. If even. The rest is sugar, water 98%, I don't know, over 90%. So what's keeping this matrix together is it the sugar? No, it's the protein. And which protein can gel at 1%? Not P. Gelatin. Yeah, P was 20%. So sad. Yeah, so gelatin is the protein that gives you this very nice jelly. It's very low protein concentration. So sad for plant proteins because, yeah, even whey protein, you can form a gel at 5%. Not great, like gelatin, but 5% compared to 20% P. So that's the power of protein. So here we're trying to, I'm gradually, having you realize different proteins, different functions. Okay, so I'm starting to build that idea that every protein is unique. They're not made equal. And then, of course, we want those high protein beverages. If you work out, you want to get your muscle regeneration or building of muscles, so you want something fast to do that. So protein beverages and usually whey protein is what is used. Why? Because you're not only looking for protein, you're looking for a beverage that looks desirable to you. So clear beverage, you can color it and still looks clear, no sedimentation. Yeah, try to put pea protein. Half of the bottle is down. So you have this clear solution, you have the whey protein that you can add up to 5%, which you can claim as a protein, high in protein. So you need at least 5% protein that is biologically available to claim high protein beverage. And the beverage, in order to be clear, it will be acidic. So you have a range of 3 to 3.4. So very acidic. We're going to learn about the buffering capacity of proteins as well, because the more you add protein, the more acid you need to add to reduce the pH to the desired pH. So it becomes sour astringent, that's another problem we talk about towards the end of the semester for modification of proteins. So look at the different proteins and the strength of these different proteins for different applications. So you have the dairy protein, it gives you your yogurt and your cheese. You have the gelatin that gives you the jelly. You have the whey protein that gives you the beverage. You have the wheat protein that give you those bakery products, egg proteins. Okay, do we hear about pea and soy, camelina, no. But we're trying to mimic all these functional proteins using those weirdos plant proteins and the weird guys that work with them, all of this class. Okay, with few exceptions. All right, so basically this is the introduction I wanted to have with show and share, but I was able to do that with images. You can take 5 minutes because it wasn't so hard on your brain, this information.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes and come back.
Pam, could you give me the attendance?
Oh, no. Oh, I did.
Let me transfer,
Yeah,
I already started marking, so. you
With
need it.
pencil?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So if you look at the theme of the league, you have to focus on one thing or so there are foundation of the yeah. Okay, as a theme, but I want to know what the other things you want to create. Do you want to select something or like want to redo it? So look at the different particles that I have and yeah, because modification is the and it's great, right? So you can say, okay, I'm gonna do daily and I'm gonna do the can be long-term modifications because in the line modification. Either the very first fragmentation or the
Oh, I'm just curious about my own, like, I know obviously when you. Why not? I know, I don't know, I don't want. Is that ethical? I don't need. What's. Yeah, I know, but I know specifically, yeah. Yeah, it's very good. And they're like, yes, there's a. And they're like, okay, you keep them there. Like, wow. You know, like, I remember like bird on the news, and then like what like so we think people took my smile and really feel like you're the student. We're ready for dinner tonight. And then they have like a very I think she's changing. Yeah. The last few months, because of course my mom. And then they were like saying public students, my brother. Nice. Yeah. But we are in that. Yeah. I think the regular bags here. Like, I don't know, like, we don't need to be there much more. They had to go to the room and then. That was and I was like, I don't see this people, like, there's, I mean, like. And I feel like anger, but they see them. Yeah.
Already on.
On the side, oh, you said it.
Yeah.
Where.
And,
Oh.
yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new development.
Very,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I'll be around. Yeah, I just got it, that's good. Like last year. Yes. Okay. But I'm already gonna have to start. Already on this project. Yeah. You want to, yeah.
Is everybody back? All right, let's get going. Busy bees. Busy bees talking about presentation already. Look at you guys. Okay. All right. So this table kind of, summarizes some of what I talked about in terms of the different functional properties that we usually refer to for proteins. All of you already, most of you running these assays already in the lab. But where does this functionality manifest in what type of food products? And then this is an example. So beverages, protein concentrate shakes, we need the protein to be soluble, easy to disperse at high quantities. Water holding capacity, that's when we look at meat and meat products, cheese, well, types of cheese, not all cheeses, like what is it called, that cheese? Cottage cheese, for example. Yeah. All right, yogurt, surimi, where you have a form of gel, some sort of gel, and you trap the water. Other types of gels, custard is a gel, even believe it or not, eggs are form a gel when you cook them. Then you have emulsification in different types of products, foaming, etc. So this is kind of like a table as an FYI, how functionality and where it is important. Okay, so let's now see what you guys remember or know. Some of you already know this. Protein functionality in systems can be affected by the methylation state of the protein, the R group of the amino acids, the number of 3 thiol groups. What is a thiol group? Sulfhydryl group. So it's thiol, sulfhydryl, or SH, all mean the same thing. So what say you? Yes. So all of them, and we're going to learn about the R group here, which is a determinant of so many things in proteins. The formation of the secondary, tertiary, quaternary structures, interactions with water, interaction with lipids, interaction with flavor. So this R group is so important And that's why we need to know the R groups of all our amino acids. Because then this will explain how different proteins from different sources behave. Number of thiol groups is very important when we have cysteine. The cysteine has 3 sulfide groups. It's very, very active. And this cysteine can stabilize a tertiary structure of the protein, where you form disulfide linkages within the protein itself, can stabilize quaternary structures of the protein where multiple subunits interact with each other via disulfide linkages. It also plays an important role in during processing, heating, physical denaturation, thermal denaturation, where intermolecular interactions occur and then polymers are formed. Sometimes these polymers are good to be formed for functionality. Sometimes large polymers form and make the protein very non-functional. So this is a very important component of the protein that plays a significant role in the formation of the protein structure. So we call intramolecular and we have intermolecular. So when I say intra, that means within one molecule of protein, intra with an A. And when I say intermolecular, that means within different molecules of the proteins, interactions within different molecules. So you want to remember these 2 terms when I say intramolecular versus intermolecular interactions. All right. So a good emulsifier is a good foaming agent. A protein that forms a strong gel is also a good emulsifier. A protein with low surface hydrophobicity is a good emulsifier. What say you? None of them. Although both emulsion and foaming is interaction of 2 different phases, but they're not the same phases. In foam, it's air. In emulsion, it's oil interacting with aqueous. In foam, it's air interacting with aqueous. So, although these depend a lot on the surface properties of the protein, but that doesn't mean a protein that emulsifies so well is a good foaming agent, and vice versa. So we're going to learn about that. We're also going to learn that it doesn't matter. Sometimes a protein formed a really good strong gel via hydrophobic interactions and disulfide chain, but because they have tendency to polymerize, they don't necessarily emulsify. So emulsification, you need to have a balance of the different groups within the protein, and you need to have a balance of protein-protein interactions and protein-water interactions. And that balance is different than the balance that you need for the gel formation. So we are going to learn all about that. A protein with low surface hydrophobicity. So this is kind of like an incomplete statement. I don't really like, so that's why it's false. Because it doesn't tell the whole story. What does low mean? What does low mean? So it really doesn't mean anything on its own. So when you want to emulsify, you want a certain level of hydrophobicity and a certain level of hydrophilicity, because you want the protein to be able to interact with the oil, and then you want the protein to be able to interact with the water. And this is different for different types of emulsions. So sometimes you have water in oil emulsion, and sometimes you have oil in water emulsion. So what's an example of oil in water emulsion? Mayonnaise. What's an example of water in oil emulsion? Butter. Yes. So butter, the dairy butter has 20% moisture. So yeah. Okay. Doing well. Doing well. So this is something that I usually give whenever I give a general talk on protein. So you might have heard me talk about it, but I want to put it in perspective of this class. So why proteins are important and there are such a high or hot topic, I would say, that they weren't that hot topic 20 years ago. Now they are. So there is a global protein demand. Doesn't matter if animal or vegetable protein. There is a general demand for the growing population. We are now at 7.8 billion. And then we're going to be 10 billion in 2050. So there is this demand on more nutritious sources of food, and protein is one of those nutrients that are needed. If we look at the protein ingredients, so when I say protein, meat is protein, so it's not an ingredient. Meat is a protein, milk protein, but ingredients specifically that are used in formulation of different products. The demand of those, whether they are dairy, animal, meat-based or plant-based, these are also increasing the global demand for them. So we have, with this increase, we see an 8% also increase in revenue, with the dollar matching the demand, increase in demand. If we look at plant proteins specifically, they account for 40% of the global protein market. So plant proteins, although they're not functioning that well, but the demand for them is increasing due to many reasons. But if we look at the global demand of protein, why is it on the rise? So without looking at your next slide, what do you think demand for protein, other than for population growth, what else is happening that is changing around the world?
Eating habits.
Eating habits. So what is driving changes in eating?
Like more animal welfare, people are like more.
Yes, animal welfare, that's driving the desire for plant protein. But if we think of animal proteins in developing countries, they're increasing the consumption of animal protein. We have changes in socioeconomic status. We have higher income, we can afford animal protein now more with higher income. We are realizing the importance of proteins as healthy diet. So aging population, preventing the degeneration of the muscles, degradation of the muscles. So linking proteins to physiological health, like antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, for dieting purposes, high protein compared to high carbohydrate is better for losing weight. So people are starting to recognize the protein role in general, as animal or plant-based. So the health. And then in developing countries, we have an increase specifically in animal-derived protein consumption. In the developed world, such as here in Europe, we are looking at alternative protein due to many reasons, sustainability, animal welfare, healthy diets linked to plant-based diet. With all of this, we're seeing a rise in vegetarians and flexitarians. So flexitarians are people that prefer vegetarian food, but sometimes eat a steak every now and then. But their preference is for plant-based. And then we're seeing a lot of allergenicity developing. So people are looking for high protein sources that are not yet allergenic. And of course, we have from a industry perspective. So I'll always give you industry examples as we go through this class. So their industry is recognizing consumers' change and demand. And they want to address the consumers' desire for high protein, plant-based protein, but they also look at always lower cost, that niche in the market to be competitive. How do we utilize byproducts? Valorizing them means adding value to the byproducts. So they are producing sunflower oil. What do we do with the sunflower cake and that is generated from oil production? So, and also the clean label. So we want to use protein to replace chemicals. So there are a lot of drivers from consumer and then from producer, and also the growing population. So basically, we want more protein in general. We're not saying that people are not going to eat animal fixed protein. That's not going to happen. But we need additional sources of proteins, and that's why we always look at what alternative protein is out there that can be utilized. And then we're going to talk a lot about different applications. So this is just what's trendy right now. Meat analog, beverages like milk alternatives, and dairy analogs like alternative to cheeses and yogurts and ice cream. These are the top three most growing categories. So we see that there is a projection on how big that market is going to be for alternative meat. So beverage also is doing well and increasing. That's a US market, so it's projected to be exceeding 2 billion by 2025. And then we have dairy analogs, non-dairy milk, non-dairy cheese, and then other like snacks, protein bars, extruded products. These are all becoming trendy for plant-based sources of protein. However, the consumer, whether for good reason or not, they want to stay away from soy and gluten, which is so sad because soy protein is one of the most functional and nutritional plant protein, and there's so much stereotypes against soy. GMO, so what? Allergenic, well, 0.5% of the population, 0.5% of the population. And then gluten is toxic. What? No. And the marketing that happens against those two is just so annoying. Gluten-free on a nut bar. Well, there are no gluten in proteins in nuts, are there? So it's just ridiculous. But this is the notion, and the industry needs to, go with the consumer until the consumer is educated, which might take 200 years, but for now, this is what we're working on, alternative proteins. But they are darn hard to work with. 1% protein to form a gel with gelatin and 20% to form a gel with ghee. This is ridiculous. So why are they challenging their structure? We're going to talk a lot about the structure of these proteins. So yeah, I did not update my slides. If you don't find them in the slide, there will be when I go to the office. I update them. So they form this. Look at whey protein, for example, and soy protein. Soy protein is globular, small molecular weight, nice protein, and then there is your hexamer protein, hexameric protein in soy that has soy and legumes in general have high hydrophobicity, complex structure. So it is just really challenging. And then there is this water protein love-hate relationships. Plant proteins don't like water. So they're not very soluble. They don't like to interact very much with water given their surface hydrophobicity. So, but sometimes we want them to interact with water, but they don't behave. So there's this challenge there. Add to it when we process your protein can denature. We're going to talk a lot about denaturation of protein and how it happens and why it happens. But the protein is denature, and now you have even more hate of interaction with water. And then you have protein interaction. Sometimes it's good. You want some sort of protein interaction. That's why we do the thermal induced gels. They require the protein to denature so that you can induce protein interaction. But sometimes denaturation ends up with this mess over here. A high molecular weight polymer that is non-textured, it's just random, and then the water is now on the outside, and you have this huge polymer that will not be functional with excess processing. So what do we want from our proteins? A lot. we are just demanding, we are just ridiculously demanding from these ridiculous proteins. We are wanting to replace whey protein in beverages. Good luck with that. So we want to have clear beverages, high protein beverages that taste good. So that's what we're hoping. And we want to form a gel like in yogurt. So we want it to act nicely, form a nice gel, have little synergies for daily alternative application. We want them to emulsify. So if I want to produce cream cheese from plant, there is this fat, there is this aqueous. So I want the protein to form emulsions, emulsify the fat, and still have a nice continuous aqueous phase. I also want the protein to act like meat. I want to texturize it. I want to form these nice fibrous structures where now you have ordered structure of proteins interacting and entrapping water. So fibrous structure. Boy, aren't we demanding on these non-functional proteins. But this is what we're going to study. We're going to look at those different proteins and why not they can function in certain ways. So we have traditional protein ingredients. What are the most common protein ingredients? Don't look ahead. What's the most common protein ingredients? Soy, whey, what else? Gelatin, casein. We have casein ingredients as well. Egg proteins, egg white. So, and uses, we just talked about a lot of their uses already. We're going to give examples of their uses. A new and emerging, we have a lot. What else? Let's be. Oil seeds, new oil seeds, alfalfa, hemp, oats, pennycress, camelina, you name it. So these are your common ingredients that we'll talk a lot about, and we'll kind of set the stage of how they function and why they function the way they function. So we're going to talk about dairy protein, milk protein. We talk about soy. We have several soy ingredients: flour, concentrate, isolated. We have the egg protein, egg whites is the main one. Cereal proteins, we use the vital gluten in a lot of applications. It's used a lot in alternatives in Europe and here as well. And then the meat protein, the gelatin and modified whey protein. So these are used as ingredients to supplement certain foods for different functionalities. And then this is the list of the alternative proteins. So we have the pulses with the peas gaining a lot of traction and the fastest growing in the market. On its heels, we have other pulses, chickpea, lentils, beans, oil seeds other than soy. We are trying to get to know more about canola and sunflower, sustainable sources of oil seeds. And then you have the others, the list is growing: oats, hemp, protein, potato in Europe, corn, almonds. We should add alfalfa here. I'll add it, don't worry. And then here the non-plant protein. So we have the yeast and algae single, and then we also have the mycoproteins, not really single, it's a multiple cell fungal proteins. We have the lab grown, the cultured meats. So we are growing meat in labs here. Yeah. But it's happening. But again, consumer acceptance is a big part of the success. Yes.
Actually, curiosity question.
Yeah.
Are you able to buy lab-grown protein?
I don't
not?
think they are commercial. I didn't see anything.
They were.
No, there were. I was gonna say regulation and also consumer acceptability. They are far from there yet. Also with insect protein. So when I teach in food analysis extraneous matter, there is defect action level for a number of insects and insect fragments that can be in food. And here we're going to eat the whole protein from insect. So it's just trying to get this regulation, the concept of eating insects, for example, the concept of eating fungal protein. So these are lagging a little behind. Even using yeast to produce beta-lactoglobulin, which is whey protein. So you just culture the yeast, you put DNA from the cow, and you generate milk protein from yeast. Again, acceptability. Perfect day milk. You heard of perfect day milk? It's commercial. Perfect day milk is basically made with protein using yeast fermentation, and it doesn't have any animal base protein in it. Again, acceptability, so there's long ways for those, but plant proteins obviously are gaining a lot of attention. But we need to make them function, and that's what we're going to learn about, the difficulty of these proteins, but ways around making them functional. Okay, how much longer do I have? 15. Cool. Yeah. You want to be this guy? Even I should put another one with a woman, because women also build muscles. So role of proteins in food, one of it is building your muscles. But I should also put a healthy older person exercising and retaining their body mass of muscles. Also, that requires protein. So a lot of food products are there just to boost the protein intake, whether it is protein shakes, drinks, protein bars for these athletes. And sometimes just health conscientious individuals are just going to go after a high protein meal to slow down aging, if that's even possible, right? Okay, so we always look at the not just building the muscle, but obviously there is a minimum requirement of protein intake. One important thing about protein is what? When we consume protein, what are we looking for? But bioavailability of what? Essential amino acids. So we're looking for a certain amount of essential amino acids in our diet. We call them essential because our body, they don't produce them. So essential amino acids, and we need to be able to hydrolyze the protein in our body to digest it, to release the essential amino acids. Sometimes the protein has high amount of essential amino acids, but it's not biologically available. So when we say it's not biologically available, that means somehow we don't have 100% digestibility. So it's not only essential amino acids that we care about how much we consume protein, around 50 grams per day, or 1 gram of protein per 1 kilogram of body weight. Yeah, assuming that we are 50 kilograms. No, this is a dream. So yeah, around 50 grams, a little higher, that doesn't hurt. But we need those 50 grams to have the complete essential amino acid and the minimum requirement of those amino acids. So there are requirements for each of the essential amino acids. And sometimes we see a label that has the percent daily value, like, okay, so I'm 36 grams, that represents 70% per serving of the daily requirement. We don't see the daily value on every nutrition label. Usually we see it if we're having a protein claim. If we're saying high source of protein, we need to see this. This is calculated based on the digestibility of the protein and the amino acid score of the protein. So ease of digestion is a big deal. All animal proteins mostly are 100% digestible. We have the problem with plant protein. And you can see here is a chart for protein digestibility corrected amino acid score. We'll talk about it a little bit more detail later on in the third topic. But basically, this is the score of the essential amino acid score that is present in the least amount among the 8 or 9 essential amino acids, and then multiplied by the digestibility score. And it is out of 1 or 100%. Basically. So we see egg, milk, whey, casein, all up there. What's up there with them is soy. So, and then the rest of the world, the rest of the protein, and it just, poor gluten is one of the lowest ones. But maybe corn, it's not here, it's lower than gluten, than the corn protein. So anyway, that's a challenge for plant protein right there, is the essential amino acid. Sometimes they can be 100% digestible, but they don't have the complete amino acids in there. So what do we do? Yes.
I'll let you ask your question, then I'll ask my question.
No, ask your question first.
I mean, I can, okay. I was just wondering if you had followed the Beyond Meat lawsuit and like the statistics behind it.
Telling me, no, I didn't.
So I was curious because it was against like labeling claims because they were claiming 20 grams of protein. So my question was, are they saying that there wasn't 20 grams of protein, or was the lawsuit claiming that those 20 grams of protein was not actually bioavailable? I was curious.
Yeah, so I don't know about that lawsuit, but there is always this vagueness about this percentage here and this amount of protein here. There should be a regulation that says this is the total protein per serving. That doesn't mean that 100% of those 36 grams are available. But people are doing, they take 36 grams and they divide it by 50. And they say, well, you know, assuming a score of 1 for PDCAS. No, shouldn't be calculated like that. You should take into account the PDCAS. So if you have 36 grams of pea protein, 80% of it will be biologically available because it has a 0.8 usually PDCAS score. So you take 36, you multiply it by 0.8, and then you divide that number by 50 to get that value. So yeah, I don't know about anything about the lawsuit, but if they're not doing that, then that is definitely they're claiming high protein source when they are not necessarily all the protein in there is biologically available. I don't know what my other question was. What do we do when we start with plant protein inherently low in lysine or inherently low in methionine or tryptophan? What do we do?
Complementary protein combination, like rice.
That is one way of doing it. We mix the poor food in Lebanon is lentils and rice. So that's a cheap dish that you can make that gives you 100% protein because rice is limiting in what? In lysine. And lentils are limiting their legumes. So they are limiting in methionine and a little bit of tryptophan. So put rice and lentils together, eat 50 grams of that protein mix, then you should be good to go. So blending, good. But what else we can do? Hydrolyzed protein will enhance the digestibility, but will not change your amino acid score. So if you have inherently less the composition of the amino acid in the protein, you cannot do anything about it because the protein comes with a certain amount of lysine, certain amount of methionine. That's what the plant is giving. So what do we do?
45. We
could 45.
If we heat them, is it easier to?
No, when we talk about amino acid composition, it's just whatever comes with the plant. So they will have protein, they have specific sequence or composition of amino acid. Can't do much by processing, can change that. Breathing. we breed for high lysine, we breed for high methionine, we can't. So a lot of the effort that we are trying to, like hemp, no matter how we enhance the solubility of hemp, charcoal with all of your effort, it's so low in lysine. So what we're trying to do is incorporate some screening of naturally existing varieties, so we can do selective breeding to enhance the lysine content. So, yeah, so there are ways, breeding, blending, yeah, basically, breeding and blending. You can't do much other than that. Okay, so proteins have physiological benefits other than, just having those amino acid nutrients. Muscle growth and regeneration. So leucine, isoleucine, branched chain amino acids, they are the best amino acids for growing muscles or preventing the degeneration of the muscle. So, and then weight loss, we talked about high protein diet compared to high fat, high carbohydrate. You have good metabolic health. You have bioactive peptides that are embedded in the sequence of the protein. So when we digest, we can release peptides that can act as antihypertensive, antidepressant, promote satiety, anti-inflammatory. So, and sometimes we generate the hydrolysate outside of our body to target the production of unique peptides. And then there are those proteins that have been associated with cardiovascular diseases or reduction of risk of cardiovascular disease. So this has been a claim by the FDA since 1999, and this is based on a lot of human studies, long-term human studies that determine that 25 grams of soy protein is good for you. And then we see soy protein in a lot of ingredients. And now, a couple of years ago, they wanted to revoke this claim. I don't know who specifically came after this claim to revoke it. And a lot of industry were against revoking this claim, because they usually put this claim on their label. So there was a lot of fight against revoking it, so it wasn't revoked as far as I know. And then proteins associate with unique molecules that are more hydrophobic, so they associate with the hydrophobic molecule of the protein. For example, soy is rich in the phytoestrogen, which also have seen a lot of backlash in terms of contradicting research. Sometimes they say it's good for you, sometimes they say, oh, men will not be fertile if they eat a lot of soy. Well, see China, for example, they have a lot of population there, and I don't think that impacted how many kids they can have. So I think there's not enough studies that go one way or the other. Some they say they act as phytoestrogens, so causing potentially breast cancer and other side effects in females, side effects in male. But there are other studies that show they have an anti-inflammatory properties that and other biophysiological properties.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about soy in the FDA, is the FDA supposed to be like a standalone regulatory agency? Or you said there's a lot of industry pushback. So when they decide whether or not to like reverse a claim or something like that, do they take into consideration the public and industry?
So the public and industry, they go, and then how they fight back is by showing results, human studies results, and things to back up by science that this shouldn't be revoked. So they kind of lobby for that claim. And it is an independent entity, but then if you want to get a GRAS status, if you want to get any new claim, you have to submit proof. And that proof is based on many years of science and human research. Yeah. Okay. So now we move on to the juicy stuff. And that is the actual physical function of the proteins in food. So they have so many functions. You think of color. So you have your nice curved white color. Casein is light scattering. So you get that white color. Cheese is not yellow. It is white. The color yellow comes from a colorant. Chromophores. So myoglobin in meat gives you the red color. You have the talons in red beets. These are proteins, give you the red color. And then you have the browning that is important in processing. So have you non-enzymatic browning, which is what? Meiotic reaction. So non-enzymatic browning, it is desirable in your baked good. You want to have this nice brown crust. And sometimes it's not desirable. So if you prepare a beverage and you have high fructose corn syrup and you have protein, oh my gosh, it's gonna brown over time due to Maillard reaction, and this is not something desirable. You have the enzymatic reaction. Why do we care? Enzymes are okay. So what is the enzyme that causes this browning? Polyphenol oxidase. It's your enemy in produce. More than 1/3 of the produce are lost annually because of brown. Granny Smith apple. It maintains its color. Why? Why? Yes, I'll come to you. But why Granny Smith apple is, if you cut it, it maintains its white color longer than another apple.
Is it more acidic?
But acidity is one of preserving, stopping the reaction. No?
Less sugar in it?
Huh? What's that?
I think less sugar in it, like.
No, and that's the sugar, polyphenol oxidase works oxygen and phenols in the plant, and the enzyme endogenous once you cut.
Okay.
Your substrate are working on enzyme and browning happens.
Is the polyphenol oxidase burned out of it?
Bleeding, right? You reduce the amount of native or innate polyphenol oxidase. Coleman, you're rolling, you're on a roll. And then sometimes your polyphenol oxidase browning is desirable, like in tea. You want your brown colored tea. I don't know about you, I don't like tea. It's clear that's not tea. Flavor. So high level of hydrophobicity gives that bitterness taste. If you also hydrolyze, you get bitter peptides, and sometimes you release your carboxyl group, so you get sour taste as well. A high percentage of amino acids that are acidic, you get that sour taste. Sulfur, egg protein has a lot of sulfur in it, so you get that sulfury note to it. Monosodium glutamate, so basically your MSG gives you that umami flavor. That's the glutamine salt. So that is the monosodium glutamate, gives you that flavor. Proteolysis and lipolysis, actually, during ripening of the cheese with the microbial presence in the enzymes there, they would chop off your protein, chop off your lipid, give you that characteristic taste and flavor of your cheese. Sweetness, dipeptide, aspartame. So asparagine and phenylalanine, or aspartic acid and phenylalanine, that is a dipeptide. So it is just 2 amino acids, and that gives you a very, very sweet taste. So when you hear plant proteins taste bad, what do you think? Is it an unfair statement or is it a true statement?
I don't think it's fair. I think it depends on the consumer. I like the taste of them.
So it's not fair from, that's one perspective why it's not fair. What else is not fair?
But like, they compare it with the meat protein, but it's totally different. It's unfair, but also if you say plant proteins are more hydrophobic, so they do taste little better.
So when we say taste, so you have the taste, you have the aroma, and gives you the flavor, right? So when Gary gives a lecture and he shows, if you Google protein taste, and it gives you all of these bad description of the protein, but really the protein has those basic tastes associated with them. They don't have the other offensive flavors that come with plant protein. Those other offensive flavors come from lipid oxidation. You have residual lipid, you are processing your ingredients, your lipid oxides. You get this wonderful hexanal, for example, and that gives you an off flavor. You have endogenous metabolites that come with the crop. For example, what's in pennycress? Saj, do you remember that one compound in pennycress?
No.
It's okay. Not Jordan, Devin in Gary's lab worked on identifying metabolites of cinnamon, which is a glucosinolate that is present in pennycress and also in camelina, but pennycress is one. So you have this whole baggage that come with the plant protein, and they say the plant protein ingredient tastes bad. Well, it's not. These are the basic tastes of the protein that comes with it. There is no pungency, there is no grassy flavor that you get. It's all aroma generated of flavors, nothing to do with the protein itself. So we cannot blame the protein for the bad plant protein reputation in terms of flavor. Okay, so texture is a big part of the physical functionality. So building viscosity has to do with water binding capacity. We're going to differentiate between water binding and water holding in the next few lectures. Even renowned researchers mix those terms up, and it really bugs me when I'm reading a paper and they define water binding, water holding capacity as water binding capacity. It's like, don't do this. Water binding has to do with the amount of water that the protein molecules bind via hydrogen bonding and polar interaction. Whereas water holding is entrapment of the water in a gel matrix. So here we have a lot of water holding taking place, gelation, coagulation, forming a coagulant like in cheese, solubility in a beverage, emulsifying and foaming. Ice cream is an emulsion and foam because you have the fat emulsified and you have the foam stabilized by the protein matrix. Viscosity has to do with water binding interactions, protein-protein interactions, protein-water interactions, and then you have the viscoelasticity for unique for the dough. This is also a foam and an emulsion, also the cake. This is tofu, gel. So we're going to talk about all of these different matrices, and we're going to look at interactions that form these different matrices. So you have protein-protein interaction, you have protein-water interaction, you have protein-lipid interaction, you have protein-saccharide interaction, you have protein-salt interactions. So all of these interactions, chemical and physical, lead to the certain structure of your food. And the interactions can be ionic, hydrogen bonding, hydrophobic, covalent, and forming your different structures. So we will learn all about these interactions and how they impact a certain functionality. Okay, so this is all introduction. I don't expect you to know all of this now. I'm just introducing what you're going to learn in this class. Well, proteins are not always good.
I'm not saying I want to leave, but class does end at 40.
Okay. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, I love proteins, so thank you for reminding me. Okay, well, you guys can go. I'll continue next week. So sad.
So sad.
Doesn't potato protein have a good PCAS score too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Potato protein are good and very soluble, but they're not very popular because there's not a lot of protein in potatoes, 1 to 2%. And they're byproduct of starch production. So you need to have a lot of that byproduct to get a little bit. So that's why in Europe, they have smaller market. So they have potato protein in the US.
I heard that today actually on the podcast, they're talking about potato protein.
Yeah, yeah.
Not a lot, but I've heard,